The air on Raven Rock Air Base was heavy, hotter than the desert sun itself. Engines should have been screaming, rattling windows, shaking the ground. Instead, silence clung to the runway like a verdict. A fighter jet Falcon 2-1 sat frozen in plain sight. Ground crew swarmed its frame, hands frantic, radios crackling. Every order barked only made the failure louder. In the tower above, foreign officers leaned forward, whispering in clipped tones. Every second without ignition was more than delay. It was humiliation. Broadcast in real time. Crowds behind the rope line pressed closer, phones raised, breath held. Something was breaking here, and everyone could feel it. And then, almost unnoticed, a figure shifted in the crowd. Not rushing, not panicking, just watching. And in that stillness, the day began to change. The Nevada sun hammered down on Raven Rock Air Base. Heat rose from the tarmac in shimmering waves. Falcon 2-1 sat in the center of it all, canopy open, systems dark, a monument to silence. Technicians darted across the concrete. Boots struck ladders. Tools clattered against steel panels. Every motion was fast, but none of it worked. Lieutenant Mark Holden stood at the heart of the chaos. 27 years old, sleeves rolled, collar undone, sweat soaking his uniform. He barked orders with a voice meant to sound sharp, yet every syllable cracked under pressure. Run it again. Check the ignition bus. Swap the relay. His crew obeyed, sprinting with cables and replacement parts. But every test ended the same way: green screens, lifeless engines. Holden felt the weight from above. The command tower's glass walls gleamed in the distance. Behind them sat NATO officers, silent judges, waiting for proof that America's finest could still impress. He imagined the wing commander's glare, the questions already forming. Why isn't the jet airborne? Why are we watching failure in real time? Each second on the clock carved deeper into his chest. Around the runway, the atmosphere thickened. Families of service members, base personnel, and a swarm of journalists crowded behind the rope line. Phones hovered high, cameras rolling. Every breath Holden took felt captured, stored, judged. If Falcon 2-1 didn't fly, it wouldn't just be a dead machine. It would be the headline that destroyed his career. He clenched his fists. He'd worked too hard to climb this fast, too hard to wear lieutenant's bars at his age. Failure now would make every promotion feel stolen, every accolade a joke. Another tech called out, "Sir, system shows normal." Holden's reply was a roar. "Then why won't it start?" The crew flinched. He could see it in their eyes: fear, frustration, doubt. They were looking to him for answers he didn't have. And in that moment, Holden hated them for it. Because if they didn't know, then he was truly alone. Near the rope line, Sergeant Brian O'Leary adjusted his cap. 20 years on the line had taught him when something didn't add up. The old mechanic inside him, buried beneath regulations, twitched awake. That was when his gaze drifted. Not toward the jet, toward a man standing just beyond the barrier. Older, thin, but upright. Khaki trousers, a plain jacket zipped halfway, shoes scuffed from years of walking. He wasn't fidgeting like the crowd. He wasn't filming like the journalists. He was watching. O'Leary's eyes narrowed. There was something in that stare. Not curiosity, not admiration. Something closer to recognition. The man's hand brushed the pocket of his jacket. For a moment, O'Leary thought he saw weight there, the outline of something carried for a long time. But the hand dropped, casual, as if the thought never mattered. Holden hadn't noticed yet. His focus was locked on the jet, his anger spilling outward. Every command he gave sounded less like authority and more like panic. "Cycle the pumps again. Double-check the control box. Don't just stand there." He kicked a toolbox, sending a wrench clattering. The crew bent lower, trying to look busy. From the rope line, laughter rippled. Journalists whispered into microphones, already crafting their narrative. America's pride? Stuck on the runway. Holden turned sharply, saw phones pointed at him, and felt bile rise in his throat. This was a disaster unfolding in real time, and he was the one in the middle of it. The old man hadn't moved, still standing, still silent. Only his eyes shifted slow, measured, never leaving the Falcon. Finally, Holden saw him. His chest burned with embarrassment, with fury. He stomped forward, pointing like a man clinging to authority. "You! Step back." Restricted zone. No reply. Just that same unshaken stare. Holden's voice rose, shrill now. "This is an active runway. You don't belong here. Get behind the line." A couple of techs chuckled nervously, feeding off his anger. O'Leary stayed silent. His gaze flicked between the lieutenant and the old man. He'd seen arrogance before. He'd seen fools before. But this felt different. The old man's stillness unnerved him. There was no fear, no confusion, no resistance, only patience. Holden stepped closer, chest heaving. "You hear me? Move or I'll have you removed." He raised a hand, ready to shove. And then the old man looked at him, not with defiance, not with pleading, with the kind of calm that stripped Holden bare. For a heartbeat, the lieutenant faltered, not because of threat, but because for the first time, he felt very young. The moment passed. Holden shoved the thought down, snapping back to his crew. "Focus on the jet. Ignore him. Work faster." Engines screamed in the distance as other fighters took off. Falcon 2-1 stayed silent. The contrast was unbearable. Reporters leaned closer to their cameras, murmuring to unseen audiences. In the tower, officials scribbled notes, every second written in ink against the base's record, and the old man remained, hands at his sides, eyes locked on the jet, still watching, still waiting, as if he knew exactly how this story would end. The countdown kept bleeding away. 30 minutes had dropped to 20. Falcon 2-1 was still nothing more than dead weight on the runway. From the tower came another burst of static. "Lieutenant Holden, report!" The commander's tone was sharp, clipped, and merciless. Holden lifted his headset with trembling fingers. "Still troubleshooting, sir. We're close." His voice cracked on the last word. Silence came back. A silence louder than any rebuke. He lowered the set, throat dry, heart racing. "Run diagnostics again!" he shouted at his crew. Boots hit concrete. Carts screeched. Hands disappeared into open panels. Every test ended with the same mockery: green lights, dead engines. The technician started avoiding his eyes. He felt it, the doubt spreading through them like oil on water. They wanted leadership. He gave them noise, and the noise wasn't working. Each new order sounded thinner, more desperate. Holden knew it, and hated it. Up in the glass tower, NATO officers leaned forward. One lifted a phone, discreetly recording the scene. Another whispered to his colleague, and both shook their heads. This wasn't just technical failure anymore. It was theater, with him cast as the fool. His career, his pride, everything balanced on a silent jet. Behind the rope line, the crowd sensed it too. The tension was thick enough to touch. Reporters whispered into microphones, "America's pride," grounded before foreign allies. Holden's jaw locked until his teeth ached. He imagined tomorrow's headlines. He imagined superiors asking why his name was tied to humiliation. He couldn't let it happen. Not after clawing so hard to wear these bars at 27. Not after sacrificing years just to stand here now. "Swap the relay again. Move faster." He slammed his fist against the fuselage. The hollow thud answered back, cruel and empty. O'Leary stood further back, arms folded. His eyes weren't on the lieutenant, or even the crew. They were on the old man by the rope line. The man hadn't shifted since he first appeared. No fidgeting, no nervous glances, just steady attention. Eyes tracing the Falcon like an architect studying blueprints. O'Leary frowned. It wasn't casual curiosity. It was something else, something that made his gut tighten. He thought of veterans he'd known, the way they carried silence like a weapon. This man had that same gravity, the kind of presence that made young soldiers straighten without knowing why. Holden noticed the sergeant staring. "What is it?" he snapped. "Don't tell me you think that old man has answers." O'Leary didn't respond. He wasn't sure himself. But he couldn't shake the feeling. Another order boomed from the tower. 12 minutes, Lieutenant. Get that jet moving or we scrub." The words landed like a hammer. Scrub meant failure in front of the world. Scrub meant NATO returning home with laughter in their throats. Scrub meant Holden's career ending before it began. He turned in circles, scanning his crew, desperate for any spark. Every face looked back at him with the same fear. They were out of ideas. His eyes landed on the old man again. Still steady. Still silent. Watching as if he knew where this was going. Something snapped. Holden strode toward him, fury barely masking panic. "You! Enough! This isn't a show. Get him out of here." Two guards moved, but O'Leary hesitated. "Sir." "Wait," he said softly. The lieutenant whirled on him, eyes blazing. "Wait? He's a trespasser." But O'Leary's voice stayed even. "Or he isn't." The words hung heavier than the desert heat. Holden stared at him, incredulous. But a whisper of doubt slipped through the cracks in his pride. He looked back at the jet, then at the crowd. Cameras still rolling, every second making him look smaller. He exhaled sharply, almost choking on his own decision. Fine. 5 minutes. He touches the wrong thing. It's on your head, Sergeant. The crew froze, shocked. Reporters surged, lenses tilting toward the rope line. A murmur spread like static. Raymond Cole finally moved. One step, then another. No rush, no drama, only purpose. The guards pulled back without command. The crowd fell quiet, sensing the shift. Even the desert wind seemed to pause. Raymond walked past the rope line and onto the runway. Every camera followed. Every whisper died. Holden clenched his fists until his nails cut skin. He hated himself for giving ground. He hated the man for taking it. But beneath the hatred was something colder, fear. Because a part of him already knew. If this old stranger succeeded, then today would belong to him, and not to the lieutenant who thought he was in charge. The desert sun hung mercilessly overhead. Every eye was fixed on Falcon 2-1. The fighter was still nothing more than a steel carcass. Raymond Cole crouched beneath the fuselage. His hands moved slowly, deliberately, fingers tracing lines invisible to younger eyes. Not a sound came from him, only quiet concentration. Holden stood rigid nearby. Every instinct screamed to drag the man away. But the commander's voice from the tower still echoed. 12 minutes left. The crew looked at each other, uncertain. One whispered, "What's he doing?" Another muttered, "He's just touching metal." Raymond finally spoke, calm and low. "Auxiliary line. Pump's not feeding." He didn't shout. He didn't need to. Holden snapped immediately. "You don't give orders here." His voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. But Sergeant O'Leary had already moved. He grabbed a cable, ran a test across the housing. The monitor flared red. Fault detected. Gasps rippled through the crew. For hours, the computer had shown green. Now the truth glared back in crimson. Holden's stomach sank. The crew's eyes burned holes through him. And above, NATO officers in the tower leaned closer, whispering behind glass. On the runway, Raymond straightened, brushing dust from his knees. "Bypass it," he said, tone flat, almost bored. Not suggestion. Statement. Holden froze. If he obeyed, he admitted this stranger knew more than him. If he refused, he risked total collapse. The tower's loudspeaker boomed again. 10 minutes, Lieutenant. If the jet isn't moving, we scrub." The words cut like a knife. Holden's lips trembled. He wanted to scream no. Instead, he forced out, "Do it." The crew scattered, hands frantic. Panels flew open, valves twisted, clamps tightened. The sound of labor filled the heavy air. Raymond stepped back, silent once more. His gaze never left the Falcon, as if he was already imagining it in the sky. O'Leary kept watching him. The old man didn't fidget, didn't pace. He simply knew. Finally, O'Leary called out, "Bypass ready." All eyes turned to Holden. The lieutenant swallowed hard. Raymond's voice came again. "Starter." The words carried weight no rank could provide. The pilot climbed the ladder, slid into the cockpit. Gloved hands moved across switches. The canopy sealed with a hiss. Engines whined to life. Turbines spun, faster and faster. For the first time all day, hope surged. Systems flickered green. Lights danced across the dash. The roar built, then collapsed. The engine coughed, sputtered, and died. The silence returned, heavier than before. The crowd groaned. A few journalists shouted in triumph. Phones caught every second. Holden seized on it. "You see? He doesn't know what he's—" But Raymond raised one hand. Not angry, not defensive, just calm. "Steady throttle," he said. "Don't force it. Let her breathe." The pilot hesitated, then adjusted, feathering the controls. The turbines whined again, softer this time, smoother. The engine caught, coughed once, then roared alive. Heat rippled off the exhaust. Panels vibrated. The ground trembled beneath their boots. The crew staggered back, shielding their faces. Reporters shouted, cameras firing in rapid bursts. The crowd erupted into applause. Up in the tower, officers stood to their feet. One NATO general muttered, "That man just saved their reputation." The commander's jaw tightened, relief mixing with something harder to name. On the tarmac, Holden stood motionless. The roar shook his bones, but inside, he felt hollow. This was supposed to be his moment. Instead, he was a footnote, and the man he'd tried to remove was the one who delivered. The pilot's voice crackled over the radio. "Engines stable. Systems green. Ready for flight." The tower replied instantly, "Get her airborne. Now." The order carried both relief and command. They had to show the world Falcon 2-1 could fly. The jet rolled forward. Wheels screeched against concrete. Exhaust blasted heat across the crew. But then, a warning light. Sharp and red on the dash. The pilot's voice came back. Tight. Hydraulic pressure dropping. Port side. The tower went silent. Holden's blood turned to ice. The crowd's cheers faltered. Confusion spreading. The jet slowed, still earthbound. Raymond didn't move. Just watched. Waiting. The commander's voice boomed. "Lieutenant, what's happening?" Holden couldn't answer. His throat had closed. Raymond stepped forward again. Slow. Unhurried. He crouched near the landing gear, pressed his palm flat against the hydraulic line, closed his eyes, felt the pulse of fluid moving through steel. Then, he opened them. Pressure valve. Seized. He looked at O'Leary. "Tap it 3 times. Hard." O'Leary didn't question. He grabbed a wrench, climbed beneath the wing. 3 sharp strikes rang out. Metal on metal. The sound echoed across the runway. Raymond nodded once. Now. The pilot throttled up. The warning light flickered, then went dark. "Hydraulics stable," the pilot reported, voice rising with disbelief. The tower erupted in chatter. Holden stared at Raymond, speechless. The old man had done it again. Not once. Twice. Falcon 2-1 surged forward. Faster now. Unstoppable. Its nose lifted, wheels leaving the ground. A thunderclap of power echoed across Raven Rock. The jet climbed hard, banking into the Sunday. The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, shouts of disbelief. Even hardened officers in the tower allowed themselves relief. But Holden couldn't share it. His legs felt weak. He had been saved. But at what cost? Raymond Cole turned away. No applause followed him. He didn't want it. Holden found his voice. Raw and broken. "Wait." Raymond paused. Didn't turn. "Who taught you?" The question hung in the desert air. For a long moment, Raymond said nothing. Then, quietly, "Men who didn't make it home." He walked on, and Holden understood. This wasn't skill. It was debt. Falcon 2-1 streaked across the sky, its roar shaking the desert floor. The shadow of its wings swept over Raven Rock like a banner of survival. On the ground, the eruption of sound was matched by the eruption of voices. In the tower, NATO officers stood. They hadn't planned to clap, but the relief was undeniable, and some let their hands meet anyway. The base commander leaned toward the glass. His expression was unreadable. They all knew what had nearly been lost. On the runway, Holden's crew exhaled for the first time in an hour. Some slumped against tool carts. Others wiped sweat from their faces, still stunned. O'Leary stayed quiet. He wasn't looking at the jet. He was watching the old man turn away. Raymond Cole walked with the same unhurried steps that had carried him forward. No hurry, no pride, just distance. Holden staggered after him. His throat was dry, words clawing to escape. He had spent the entire morning spitting commands, but now he could barely speak. "Why?" he called out. Raymond stopped. This time, he turned. The lieutenant's face was stripped bare. "Why help us? We treated you like—" He couldn't finish. Raymond studied him. Not with judgment, with something closer to recognition. "Because the jet doesn't care who fixes it," he said quietly. "And the men inside don't deserve to die because of pride." The words landed like stones. Holden's mouth opened, then closed. There was nothing to say. Raymond reached into his jacket, pulled out the leather tool roll. The old spanner lay across faded felt, edges blackened by decades. He held it out to O'Leary. The sergeant's eyes widened. "Keep it," Raymond said. "You'll know when someone needs it." O'Leary took it, hands trembling. The weight was ordinary, but it felt sacred. "Sir, I don't even know your name," O'Leary said. Raymond almost smiled. "Almost. You don't need to." He turned again, this time for the last time. Holden watched him go, feeling smaller with every step the old man took. The crowd had begun to disperse. Cameras lowered. The spectacle was over, but O'Leary stayed rooted, the tool roll clutched against his chest. He thought of men he'd known, veterans who carried silence like armor. This man had that same gravity. Above them, Falcon 2-1 circled once more. The pilot's voice came over the comms, steady and calm. "Demonstration complete. Returning to base." Cheers rose again, but softer now. The base commander's voice boomed from the tower. "Mission confirmed. Falcon 2-1 successful." It was official. The crisis was over, yet the man who had made it possible was gone. No medals, no thanks, no speech. just silence in his wake. Holden finally moved. He walked back to his crew, who looked at him with new eyes. Not respect. Not quite, but something different. Something that knew he'd been broken open today. Later, the footage would spread. Clips of a dead fighter reborn. A demonstration saved at the last second. But hidden inside every frame, if one looked closely, was the outline of an older man watching quietly at the edge. By then, rumors would run wild. Some would call him a forgotten engineer. Others, a veteran from wars, too old to matter. No one would agree on the details, but all would agree on this. The day was saved by someone no one expected. That night, O'Leary sat alone in the hangar. The leather roll lay open on the workbench before him, each tool worn smooth by hands that had saved machines, and the men inside them. He traced the spanner's edge, and wondered how many lives it had touched before his. Outside, the desert cooled. Stars emerged, hard and bright. Falcon 2-1 rested in its bay, silent once more. But this time, the silence felt different. Not like death, like rest. And somewhere beyond the fence line, walking roads no map could name, Raymond Cole carried the weight of what he'd always carried. The memory of men who taught him, and the machines that brought them home. Or didn't.